Welcome to Conversations Different, the podcast from the Santa Fe New Mexican, featuring the interesting people, places, and issues of northern New Mexico. This is Inez Russell Gomez, and today we are focusing on the issue of gun safety in New Mexico. With us are two young people with Every Town for Gun Safety, Bo Wilson and Wesley Clum out of Albuquerque. Welcome, Bo and Wesley. Let's start with Bo and then go to Wesley and tell us how you came to be involved with the issue of gun safety.
Yeah, so hi, I'm Bo. When I was in high school, there was a chapter of Students Demand Action, which is the largest youth gun violence prevention organization. So we're part of Every Town for Gun Safety. And so I got involved mainly my senior year of high school after doing various sit-ins and walkouts my junior year. And now I've been kind of climbing up to bigger levels of advocacy with Students Demand Action. There is now a chapter at the University of New Mexico that I started. And so, I've been doing that and doing some policy work as well with Every Town. But again, we do a lot more than just policy work, but mainly that's what I've been doing.
That's good. How about you, Wesley?
Yeah, so I met Bo last year at the legislative session while I was working for the ACLU, doing volunteering for the ACLU. And I was shadowing a legislator then, and I saw all the community and all the people from Students Demand Action there, and I was really moved. And so as I saw that, I thought, man, I really need to get involved in this. So this year I founded a chapter at Bosque School. And more, a lot like Bo, this year got into do a lot of stuff during the legislative session, do a lot of advocacy work, and talk to a lot of people in our community. And a lot, the bulk of it this year has been advocating for legislation.
Okay. So talk about, Bo, what it's like growing up aware that students in schools are being hurt and shot. And I don't know when you started doing those lockdown drills. Has that been a part of your whole experience?
Yes, so it has been a part of my whole experience. When the Sandy Hook shooting happened, I was actually in the same grade as a majority of the kids affected by that. And so pretty much ever since I can remember being in school after preschool, we were dealing with active shooter drills. We were dealing with teachers telling us to defend ourselves in certain ways and things like that. And so, it's been scary. And I've been here advocating so that hopefully we're the last generation that has to deal with this. It's scary, but also with us, our generation being the ones fully impacted by it, our voices matter more than ever and matter probably the most in this conversation because we're the ones being most, fully impacted.
That's true. And Wesley, and I was thinking before we set up the interview that you guys are too young to have been born when Columbine happened, which really seems like the modern day impetus for all of the gun shootings that still continue at schools. What do you remember about your schooling and those drills and things like that?
Yeah, so from the early days, it was constantly something we had to do. From starting in elementary school and going on till now, it's been ingrained in my schooling. Following that, as we know, many schools implemented lockdown procedures, lockdown practices, and actually when I started going towards middle school, at Desert Ridge Middle School here in Albuquerque, we started doing a new type of training, which involved preparing for actually defending ourselves against someone. And so the evolution of that has been, seen by everybody in my generation. And for me particularly, it has just, it's just constant. And it's something that has really, having to deal with this, having it impede my education as it has, and being constantly reminded that we're in a world where this happens, has really shifted my view on guns and on school culture in general. And so it's really motivated me and a lot of my peers to be involved in this issue. And unfortunately, it's really affected us too.
Yeah, I can't imagine. My son is older than you guys, and he got it at the last couple of years, but most of his schooling was without lockdown drills. I mean, if they had a fire drill and those kinds of things, he was pretty lucky, I think. I wonder, Bo, how does it feel to go to advocate at the legislature and really get stymied by, Second Amendment absolutists or people who are afraid that they'll get targeted if they vote for a gun safety bill? How do you feel about your work that way?
I think it's complicated just because, I know a lot of gun owners in my personal life, but I've seen it on a different level. I think going into the legislature, it is much different than, on a personal level, because I think there are a lot of people feel more threatened on either side of the conversation. But I think people also have to understand that our work isn't just policy related. We do a lot of work advocating for just proper gun safety, and mental health resources. But when it comes to being at the legislature, it can be scary, going one-on-one with people that might not agree with you. I mean, I've been harassed a couple times just for being there and being a student advocating for it. But it is what it is. It's part of the territory, and I still enjoy going up there and advocating for changing what our experiences shouldn't have been and shouldn't be.
Right. What about you, Wesley? How do you feel, let's say, when you're advocating someone from, Eastern New Mexico who might not be open to what you have to say?
Yeah, I've had a lot of my fair share of conversations with the opposition, because that's what you got to do. And it's interesting listening to their point of view, and it's always a human point of view. I mean, they're always speaking on their perspective on life, and I try to come at it with a human perspective, and sometimes it isn't. It's hard to listen to that. It's hard to be told. Sometimes it feels like people are saying that the rights of their guns are more important than my rights to live. Mm-hmm. And I think my right to live and every school child's right to live is it's our right as Americans. It's our right as human beings. And so it does get to the point where occasionally I'm pretty angry going into those legislative sessions, and I'm pretty angry at the legislators that aren't listening to us. And so I feel like really regularly we're talked down to as students. It's hard to come into a conversation with someone who's the vast majority of the people who are arguing in opposition are older, have a lot more experience, maybe arguing these points. And so, unfortunately, we come into these conversations really often with this perspective that the youth don't know what they're talking about. We don't know why we're advocating for these issues. And I think it's really a stereotype that makes it hard to make any progress and to share our views sometimes. And, of course, we're a little less experienced than some folk. But, I'd have to say that we really know our stuff.
Yeah, no, it sounds like it. And we'll take a quick break right now and be back in a moment with more Conversations Different.
If you're considering going solar but aren't sure who to speak with for accurate information, avoid the high-pressured sales and receive a hassle-free experience. Contact Positive Energy Solar today. Positive Energy is your local, trusted, and employee-owned solar experts that have been helping New Mexicans live more sustainably since 1997. Go solar with confidence. Schedule your free, no-obligation solar evaluation at positiveenergysolar.com.
Generate positive energy. Positive Energy Solar.
We are back with Conversations Different, talking to Bo and Wesley a little bit about their experience lobbying at the legislature this past session. So, Bo, what was your achievement? What are you proudest of getting out of this session?
I'm really proud that we were just going up there and advocating for ourselves. I think that enough is just really important. I mean, I was thanked a couple times by people just glad that we were showing up and advocating for ourselves, even if they disagreed with us. But for me personally, I'm just proud that we were able to get as far as we did. I mean, our bill got introduced pretty late in the session, and we still got it into the Senate Finance Committee, and it got stuck there. But I think that is still really important, and people saw that we were showing up pretty consistently to as many hearings as we could. So I think as a whole, just showing up was really important for me personally.
That makes sense. So Wesley, what did that bill want to do?
Yeah, so it regulates assault weapons. And so the bill seeks to stop the production of some assault weapons in New Mexico. Their weapon and high capacity magazines as well. They're weapons that are particularly dangerous. They result in many more injuries, many more deaths. And so we saw that this bill does a test. It's, I won't get into the very big details, but does a test guns that use gas to rechamber their bullets, which make them shoot very quickly, would be more regulated and prohibited in certain instances. And so that's what it really set out to do.
Okay, that makes sense. And Bo, going back to you, there's always the big bills that we talk about, whether it's making the age to purchase some weapons older, whether it's getting rid of assault weapons or high capacity magazines. How can the sides who are pro-gun versus non-pro-gun work together maybe to really focus on storage, on gun safety practices? I've always wondered why there couldn't be some middle ground where people could actually reduce harm that way.
Yeah, for sure. So as someone that grew up in a household with guns, so my dad is a veteran and he was trained in the military with, those types of weapons and, regular weapons as well as the very dangerous ones that, like assault weapons. Coming from someone that grew up in that type of culture, I think it is really, really important that we really push that type of education. And so, for a community of people that, they're worried about wanting to keep themselves safe and their families safe for the most part, that's usually one of the main arguments that I hear, and we want to end violence in our communities. I think ending violence, or at least, wanting to limit it, should be the biggest thing there that brings people together. At least from my perspective, and from what I've heard, from my dad, just safe practices with firearm is like the biggest thing there. Encouraging them to, have safe, secure storage and keep it away from children. And I feel like that's a no-brainer, but for some people that I've talked to on the opposition, they don't care as much about that. And I think if we really bring that forward, that could help at least open their minds a little bit. But again, not everyone's as open, and that's what it is.
Yeah, no, that's true. I think that when you have a situation where there's more guns than there are people in the country, Wesley, it must feel as though you're kind of working against the tide. I mean, how do you stay encouraged about progress when you have such a high bar to cross?
Yeah, absolutely. It is a little, it's overwhelming at times. It's hard to be a student advocating for our safety at times. But I do know that our state has made a lot of improvement, and our whole nation has really. We're dealing with an issue here that is deeply rooted in our society, and what keeps me going is knowing that students are fighting, and I see students every single day fighting for this issue, whether it be on social media or just people talking about it in school. And knowing that we had, going to the legislature and seeing my peers there, seeing people so, in the moment, knowing that this is a problem, it motivates me, and it motivates, our whole community to move to helping this issue. And no matter, really, brass tacks, this issue, when something happens, it motivates the community, and something tragic will just help us move forward towards change. And, these tragedies show people that this is something that is serious. Yeah. And, it's an unfortunate thing. And it's something that I'd like the legislators to see coming out of the session when we have like this shooting in Las Cruces. But seeing these tragedies happen and seeing how it mobilizes people, really, I think it brings everyone together, and it definitely motivates me.
Okay. Bo, I'm thinking about the fact that so many young people seem so attracted to guns. he mentioned the shooting in Las Cruces, and that was, people who should be out enjoying their cars, but for some reason started shooting each other. How do we stop like a 17 or a 16-year-old from getting a gun through a Snapchat conversation? Are there laws or is it behavior that you have to change?
I mean, there's a lot to unpack there, and I think it is a multifaceted issue. It's not just one thing or another. By law, minors aren't allowed to have firearms or purchase them anyways. So the way they get them is, I'm not an expert on how that happens or anything like that. But what I do know is that we need to really open more resources and really push that we have these things available. I think one of the biggest issues that really push young people to become violent is that they don't really have another outlet, and those things aren't being pushed towards them in a better manner. And so things like this tend to happen. And so I think we need to really improve access to, proper gun safe education, different programs to, push people to do their best and invest in better mental health resources for youth in schools and other programs. Because I think that is the biggest thing there. Makes
sense. Wesley, talk about what you see among your peers in terms of what young kids I've heard say, we need a gun to feel safe. And maybe that's why they take it to the park. How can we change that attitude?
I've had conversations with my friends who are gun owners, or their parents are, or who support the other side, and I've enjoyed those conversations pretty deeply because they usually end with a lot of agreement around safety, and I think a lot of the people who resort to using firearms in any case to solve problems don't have the problem-solving skills or the communication skills to solve them in other ways. And so usually what I think of in terms of how we can keep youth solving problems in better ways is to educate them on, communication, on the dangers of these weapons, because I don't think any of the people involved in any shooting and many shootings want the outcome to be the other person dies.
Right, unless you're a crazy person who's going to shoot up a building or a school or whatever. But just a regular, you get mad and you take out your gun for whatever reason, you don't really expect the end result.
Yeah, and so I think in cases like Las Cruces, and in many cases where, or even some school shootings where people don't have those outlets, they don't have the problem solving skills, and I think that's something we need to teach, and I think it's something that it stems from many things in our society, especially in New Mexico, poverty, our education, but it is something that is in our reach. And this education is it's provided in many other places, and I think that might be our education might be one of the reasons why we have such high rates of juvenile violence. Education and teaching kids that talking helps solve problems, not shooting.
Right.
And that's really pivotal in making sure our youth don't solve problems that way.
I'll go back to you, Bo, and talk about when you talk to your friends about guns and about violence and about how they deal with anger, do they have the skills they need to cope?
I feel like a lot of it is available to us, but I think that a lot of it isn't necessarily pushed forward. I know most of, at least me and my friends, more of us deal with the anxiety and the anger of what's going on, mm-hmm. not rather that we want to hurt people, but we're with what's going on in our nation. But I feel that most of us, since, we've talked to each other, have, the communication with each other to have other outlets to these things. But again, I do think that we need to have better access to, certain types of education within these types of situations, and then mental health counseling and stuff like that.
Yeah. It's kind of like when the teachers used to tell you, use your words, boys. More kids need to use their words and avoid a weapon, so to speak. On that note, we'll take a quick break and be back in a moment with more Conversations Different.
This is Patrick Dorsey, publisher of the Santa Fe New Mexican. Looking to reach a wider audience and grow your business? For 175 years, the Santa Fe New Mexican has been the trusted voice of Santa Fe, with unmatched local reach in print and online. In addition to our long-standing, independent, family-owned newspaper, we have a full-fledged marketing team with the expertise to help you succeed in the 21st century. From traditional print to precision-targeted digital advertising, we have the tools to connect you with your ideal customers. Partner with us and see the results for yourself. Advertise with the Santa Fe New Mexican and unlock your business's full potential. Visit us at santaFeNewMexican.com/advertising or call us at 505-995-3852. Thank you.
We are back with Conversations Different, talking to Wesley and Bo. And there's a public safety special session being promised for later this year. And a lot of it is going to focus on juvenile crime, perhaps, and stiffer sentences, etc. Wesley, do you think that the assault rifle ban is going to come back?
I think it absolutely has to. I think our legislators know that this is what the students support and this is what the students need. And I think a lot of our legislators know that increasing sentences on juveniles will not help. It will not help this deeply societal issue. And so we know that a lot of our legislators know that this assault weapons ban is pivotal in removing the tool that a lot of youth use to commit crimes. And if we can remove that tool, it's going to help a lot.
Okay. Bo, what do you think about the prospects for this during the special session?
I agree with Wesley. It will be a very pivotal moment for us in our movement, especially because we know that, the deadliest mass shootings that we've had in U.S. history have been committed with these types of assault weapons. And so, prohibiting them and putting some sort of regulation on them will help ensure that these risks are going to be a lot lower if someone does end up coming somewhere with a firearm. The amount of deaths would be a lot lower with, that type of weapon. And, it just ensures that these types of situations are a lot less likely to happen.
Right. Yeah, I always say if someone has to reload, there's a chance to tackle them in between. But if you've got a magazine with 50 bullets, 100 bullets, it's going to be a lot harder to stop them. Wesley, thinking about, it's your final months in school, you're going to graduate. How do you take your advocacy with you wherever you go? Is this something that's going to be part of your life?
Absolutely. For me, it absolutely will be something that I'm constantly involved with. It's a constant fight for a better world. And so I'm graduating. I'm going to be fighting this special session for this ban, and I'll be going to California to fight for better society there. And so I know Students Demand Action is the biggest student-led, youth-led gun advocacy organization, and luckily it stems everywhere. And so I'll be going, and I'll be with the same supportive group of people in California, and with the same supportive organization. And it really, this organization really lets me maintain my advocacy wherever I go. We have schools everywhere in the country who are able to spread their advocacy through this organization.
Good. And Bo, I think it's pretty impressive that as a freshman, you started your own chapter at UNM. What was that like, getting people together and starting the work?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I already had a friend who was interested and she wanted to help out and did a little bit at our old high school together. And a lot of our current members actually participated at my old high school as well. And so the process of getting it started was a little tricky at first, but that's how most organizations are on college campuses. But after we got that established, it's pretty good. We're still actively recruiting, but I'm still glad, even though we have a small group, that, people are coming together because we're all very motivated to end gun violence in our communities.
Do you guys have meetings? Do you lobby? I mean, how does it work? Like, is maybe you get over pizza and you can't have beer yet, but what do you do to get it going?
We have weekly meetings, and I also meet with our Moms Demand Action team.
Okay.
And so I relay information that we get from them to our team. But a lot of the times it's just us meeting every Thursday at 4 o'clock in the same place approximately. And we go over, updates from the legislative session or ways to advocate or anything that we can think of that is, impactful to our movement and stuff like that.
Oh, that's pretty impressive because I know that freshman year is always complicated and hard because the load is different from high school. So you're doing a lot of extra stuff as well as you're keeping up with your studies. At your school, Wesley, is this a big interest or is it kind of a niche thing for you and the other people participating? How widespread is the disgust of young people with gun safety worries?
Yeah, I think that's a great question. Well, the struggle is felt throughout the school. It's felt throughout every single student, whether we like it or not. The club is actually fairly popular. There are a lot of people who are really interested in advocating for this topic. The conversations I have with students on a regular basis prove to me that our students at my school feel very deeply about this issue, and there's so much passion for solving this problem. I think that, you could talk to, there's not a single person in my school you could talk to, ask them, do you want to support this issue with me? And they say no. And so it's really, at least in my school, we have a really great community and we have a lot of passionate students.
Oh, that makes it, I think, a lot easier to work. Bo, obviously, it's not just at school that we worry about gun violence. How does it feel to grow up in a world where you're at a park and there's a big shooting, or you go to the movies and you get in a fight over a seat and someone gets killed? I mean, do guns have to be so much a part of your daily life and our daily lives?
Yeah, great question. I think that, having guns pretty much everywhere is a very unnecessary thing. I mean, typically in these circumstances, when these shootings happened, the main thing of violence that happens is that shooting committed with that firearm. And so, growing up in in this society where, gun culture is so popular, it's just strange. I mean, even growing up in a household where, guns were normalized, I've shot a gun. It's, pretty common in my family. It's just a very strange thing to grow up in. And as much as, it's frightening, it's just weird to look at, considering other countries that don't deal with this problem on such a large scale, or their countries take it a lot more seriously, a lot quicker, and we haven't. And so just growing up in that culture is just strange is the best way I can put it.
No, it's true. I mean, if you live in a country where there are fewer guns, you don't go to the movies and think about where your exit will be, or, wonder if someone at church is because some of the big churches have actual armed security guards, which to me just seems like such a mixed message. Wesley, are there places where you've been in public where you've been afraid because you saw guns or you knew they were coming, or is it just that general sense of unease that you don't know who might be packing, so to speak?
I think it's absolutely a mix of both. I go to when I go to protests, especially, I'm worried, and that's when I'm most worried about people that are absolutely there with guns as a sign of power.
Yeah.
But you never know what those people might do if they feel a certain way that day. And so there's always a looming feeling of unease. And even not at protests, I worry about going to the grocery store again, going to the movies, going out on a walk, because you never know what kind of day someone could be having, and you never know what they could have on them. And I think it's a really unfortunate thing that everyone has to deal with. I mean, these weapons being so widespread makes our society a little more uneasy. And I don't think that's what we deserve. And I don't think that's what Americans want. I don't think we want an unsafe society. And I think a lot of people need to think about it and realize that guns aren't the way to defend yourself all the time. And you shouldn't, and people, I personally think that I should never have to have a gun to defend myself.
Yeah.
It's not a requirement for going in public.
Yeah. I always tell people that, the Second Amendment is important. It's in the Constitution, but the First Amendment with its freedom of association is important as well. And if you don't feel safe in public spaces, your associations are limited to some degree.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So, Bo, how do you end? Are you ready for finals? Is it almost time?
Yeah, no, I'm ready. It's almost time. We have like a couple weeks left, and it's a little scary with some of my classes, but for the most part, I'm glad it's coming up.
Good. And have you had prom and everything, Wesley? Are you done, or is all the fun stuff still ahead?
I've still got a lot of fun stuff going ahead of me. I'm in the midst of a lot of work right now. I'm finishing up my senior thesis on immigration law, and I'm doing a lot of work for finalizing my classes and getting through the year, but I'm pretty excited for the summer.
Well, we thank you for advocating for what you believe, because that's how we grow great future citizens and leaders. And thanks a lot for taking time with us. And this has been another Conversations Different, and we'll be back next week. Thank you for listening to Conversations Different, hosted by me, Inez Russell Gomez, editorial page editor for the Santa Fe New Mexican. Our weekly episodes would not be possible without your support. We hope you enjoy them and keep listening. New episodes drop every Tuesday. Consider signing up for our newsletter so you never miss an episode, and while you're at it, consider subscribing to the Santa Fe New Mexican. Our podcast is available by visiting our website, santafenewmexican.com/podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts. Conversations Different with Inez Russell Gomez is produced by Matt Dalside and Ernesto Cisneros, published by the Santa Fe New Mexican, a local and independent newspaper owned by Robin Martin.